Production of KMmedia.pro. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So come on over into our world. I know you'll like it, because on today's show, about life design in all of its forms. We have a wonderful guest here who is a designer and a life designer, if you will. And I'll introduce her in just a second. But first, Nathan, I got to say hello. How are you?
Good afternoon, Kevin. Doing well. Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you as well. And just because we've done this before, we need to do it again. And that is, could you tell everybody what we're doing new this year that's a lot of fun?
Sure, just because, they probably heard it a lot of times, but it never, is an issue to repeat it again. But just to get it taken care of, I'm going to say it in my best fast-paced auctioneer voice, okay?
Perfect.
Unfortunately, I can't do that, so I'm going to have to go normal pace. We are now streaming our video for the show onto multiple social media platforms. We have it going to YouTube and Facebook, and that could be found under both the KKNW and Positive Talk Radio accounts. And if you have Twitter, you can go to the KKNW Twitter page. So that gives you 5 different places to stream the video. You can also go to the 1150kknw.com, and it has a link to the video on the homepage there as well. Makes it nice and easy to access.
It does indeed. And you actually have over 3,000 subscribers. So congratulations.
We do. And that's just in one of those alone, so even more on top of that.
Exactly. Well, I'd like to also introduce Dana Parker. Dana, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Kevin?
I'm grand, thank you. Are you feeling better?
Yes.
Oh,
there's a flu going around over here.
I tell you guys, they go out actually into the world, get all sick and stuff. And of course, you've got 8 to 10 kids wandering around your house, so.
I mean, kind of, but not quite. We have three, anywhere between 3 and 7 consistently.
And if you could pull your microphone just a little bit closer, I think that's what Nathan is intimating. Is that true, Nathan?
Yeah, it sounds like it's a little far away.
I'm trying to fix some things.
Very good. Well, when you got a petri dish of a bunch of kids, especially a bunch of boys running around, it's easy to get sick.
Yes.
So what I did is I had the forethought of growing them up early, so they're all gone now. and the grandchildren and stuff, they can get to deal with them, and I don't have to. So anyway, Dana, have you heard much about life design?
No.
Well, today we will be very educational for all of us, because we've got a young lady who is with us who is a speaker. She is a designer, and she actually does the physical design of your house and stuff. But more importantly, she's morphed that into working with the design of your life. And her name is Shana, and I'm going to massacre your last name, even though I'm looking at it right here. Nathan, her last name, please.
All right, so here we go. Shana Francesca.
Yeah, hey, guys.
Maybe think of the singer, famous Francesca Battistelli.
Yeah.
I couldn't even say that. Who?
Francesca Battistelli.
Okay.
Not relevant. We're talking about Shana Francesca today.
Exactly. And Dana, I'd like you to meet Shana, Dana. How are you guys?
Hi, Shana. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Now, just so you know, Dana is a coach, and she works predominantly with women because she doesn't like men very much. And
that is not true.
And
I have a lot of men in my life.
Yes, you do.
I do.
Yes, you do. But between her and her significant other, they got what, 10 boys?
So 9. Yeah.
Oh, great. You've got a football team.
9 boys and a girl.
It's almost like a please don't eat the daisies situation. You know what I mean? Just
no,
really
yes. We're a blended family. Yeah.
Very, very nice. So Shana, I'm glad that you're here. I've wanted to talk to you all week long. This is going to be a great show. You are quite adept at what you do, but I'd love for you to tell our audience what you do and why you do what you do.
Oh gosh, yeah. So what I am is a life designer. I'm a speaker and a writer and an entrepreneur. And I got into this work specifically because in my own life, I was born into an abusive household and into a religious, my family joined a religious extremist cult. Let's just call it what it is. And having been restricted, growing up in that very restricted environment where I wasn't allowed to be myself, I wasn't allowed to even be curious about the rules, who dictated them, why did they exist, why was I having to abide by them? I wasn't even allowed to ask those questions because I risked being ousted by my community and by my family, not only in this life, but the next. And so growing up in that restricted environment, it was necessary really for me to try to discover ways where I could show up as my whole self and be whole and seen and heard and understood completely. And my imagination became that place. And not only that, but when you are in that environment, in that restricted environment, and you're surrounded by people who are unhealthy in their mind, they aren't attracting people who are healthy, right? They're also surrounded by other unhealthy people, and so books became this necessary resource for me. Books became this place where I needed to see and understand what was possible, right? I needed someone to give me a view of a world where, I could actually be happy and healthy and understood and see that there was other possibilities in this world. And so that kind of led to me becoming an interior designer, recognizing that our physical environment is a reflection of our beliefs about ourselves, is a place that we can create for ourselves to feel safe and heard and understood. And so eventually I was like, okay, being an interior designer is a thing. And that's what I went to school for. And then eventually, started to recognize that there was a deep psychological component to my interior design work. And I saw it transform people's lives. I saw as I created environments that deeply reflected who they were as human beings, not trends, not marketing, not what they saw on social media or magazines. Prior to social media, we had magazines, you know. Uh,
Yeah. Hey, I remember them.
Right? Exactly. So it wasn't a function of marketing. It was me just being walked through their lives by them and then recognizing how I could set their home as the stage from which they told the story of their life. We spend 2/3 of our life inside of our home. And so it's deeply important that in fact um we have that as a place that we feel reflected in, right? That authentically, not a reflection of marketing and everybody's home kind of looking at remixed versions of each other. And so I started to see my work transform people's lives. Them suddenly be able to like start dating again and maybe apply for those jobs they didn't feel like they had the right to before, or start having those dinner parties that they felt uncomfortable having before because their environment just didn't feel the way that they wanted it to. And eventually that led to me recognizing that my interior design work was much bigger than just what people understood it to be. And so I needed to really remarket that. I really needed to encompass the psychological and the mental health aspect and the physical aspect. And so creating those and blending those together became what I call now life design.
It's amazing to me how important it is for your physical surroundings to reflect who you really are, because that's how you feel really good about hanging out at your home. If you've
Yeah.
got things around you, and you've got your the whole, and it feels good.
Yeah.
uh, and that's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's deeply a part of it is that we, for instance, as an example to help people kind of understand what I mean, is that after giving one of my talks, a woman came up to me and she said, I'm in the middle of a divorce and like, I just moved out onto into my own place and I have these like posters up on the wall and I know I need to take them down and, do something with my space. And she's like, this talk inspired me. And I was like, hold on, can we hit a pause? Do you have a moment for me to ask you a few questions? And she's like, absolutely. So I said, hey, what are the posters of? And she's like, oh, they're of concerts. And I said, amazing. Are these concerts that you've been to? And she's like, yeah, they are. And I'm like, did you enjoy your experience there? Like, and she's like, absolutely. It's what, I got the posters because these are bands that I love. And I said, well, let me ask you something. Were any of those posters on the wall while you were married? And she said, no. And I was like, okay, well, do those posters kind of remind you of your wild, of like who you really are, of who you want, how you want to show up in the world? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, so then maybe the posters absolutely do not come off of the wall. Maybe the difference between what's being done with those posters now and what could be done is this be more intentional about how they show up on the wall. Maybe they get, a simple frame. Maybe they're organized in a better way, like in a collage, that feels more representative of your experience in those moments. Maybe it's just that they show up more intentionally on the wall. They're not coming down, right? Because they represent, part of how you see yourself. And that is how I see interior design. It's not about it having to align with anybody else's expectation of what belongs in your home, not even mine, right? It absolutely needs to be a reflection of who you know yourself to be.
It's it's interesting. When I was young, now this is way before you were young. You no, wait a minute. That's all right. Anyway, and
I'm older than I look.
now you're not. And you look beautiful, by the way. And if you want to go find out what she looks like, you can go to the Positive Talk channel, the YouTube channel, and you can see us live doing the show right there. But way back in the early 1980s, late 70s, they were coming out with these video games that you could they were stand-up video games. They're now in like all the bowling alleys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In those days there was one that was called Asteroids, and I used to go into with $10 in quarters and go play that game. And I always swore to myself that I would have one of those stand-up games in my home. And the people around me said, oh, you can't do that. I don't want that in my living room. I don't like that. And I said, but that's what I've always wanted to have. So when I got on my own after my divorce and I could afford it, guess what I bought?
Yeah, an arcade style video game.
And it's a stand up. It's a conversation piece, because whenever somebody comes over, it's like, I remember that and stuff. So it makes me feel good just to have it there.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to couples and families, it's about a blending of everybody's needs and wants and so on and so forth. But everybody's still feeling seen and heard and understood without it kind of, invading each other, right? It's like finding that beautiful blend, that beautiful balance. That's also a huge part of my work, is like helping people to all feel seen within their physical environment.
But your work has evolved.
Yeah.
It has evolved far, far past that.
Yeah.
And all the way up into you've got by the way, if you want to go to her website, it is Concinnate World. Is that
Concinnate.world. Yeah.
Yes, Concinnate.world.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about what that word means in a second. But
yeah,
first, I wanted to let people know that if you go there, she's got a video of herself at the very beginning, and it's a 5-minute video, and it's worth listening to and watching, because you talk about the fact that your work has evolved into wanting to change the world one person at a time, which is very similar to what our mission is here at Positive Talk. So that's why I'm really glad that you're here. Dana had to step out for a few because she was having audio difficulties.
Yeah, no worries.
She'll come back in a few minutes. But I just wanted where did that evolve from? And was that just a natural process of your work?
I think it was always a part of my work, right? I just didn't there's, especially for us as women, and I think everybody kind of struggles with this, is like imposter syndrome, is like, do I have the right to speak into this thing, right? Do I have the right to take up space in this way, right? Do I have the right to not just be an interior designer? Right? Like that was the question I was wrestling with for a really long time. And it was actually one of my clients that helped me to really gain clarity on that. He is the head of a medical department at a very prestigious hospital in Philadelphia. And he said, oh yeah, I tell everyone you're my interior designer and my life coach. And that was the moment that I knew I had been playing small for way too long, right? And I'd been waiting for someone to give me permission, and it was me that needed to give me permission to be able to step into that and really figure out, right, for myself, what does it look like to move forward with the principles that I use as an interior designer, but them kind of stepping forward and not having to rely on my interior design degree, not feeling like I'm propped up by it, and knowing I could step beyond it. And so yeah, it became a natural outgrowth, but the way that I work as an interior designer was always a reflection of my experiences throughout my life, right? It was always a reflection of my own designing my own life, right? Out of, an abusive situation, out of a cult, into, stepping into, deconstructing all of those beliefs, asking myself, what do I actually believe, establishing that, letting myself, my authentic self, take up space without taking it away from anyone else the way that I had seen and had been done to me, right? And just kind of exploring all of that and creating my life as my own, an authentic representation of myself, and empowering others to do the same, right? All along the way, I was doing the same for my clients. And so that just became it just kind of became that. It was already that. I just had to say it out loud, right?
Well, it's interesting because all three of us that are here, and Dana's back, by the way. Dana, how you doing?
Oh, Dana, you're on mute.
I'm doing good. Having some audio issues, but
How
doing
you
my
sound? How do you sound better now? But
Good.
much better now. But I would, because we all came, the three of us came from religious backgrounds. Mine was conservative, um, Lutheran, and Dana will tell us if she wants to. But Ben, yours was a cult. And I was talking with a good friend of mine yesterday who is on the show from time to time, and she said I have to be very careful about the subject matter that I am on your show, because my family, when I was 19 years old, they actually did an intervention with me. A spiritual intervention is what they called it, or a religious thing. And people were praying over him because she was going down the way of the devil and all that kind of stuff. Did that
Oh,
happen? Did that happen to you as well? Were you
oh boy.
forced into that kind of environment, Shana?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking Dana at first. Yeah, there's been still now, via Facebook, however people have access to me, I still get messages because I post a lot, about my deconstructive journey to share with others, to empower others to question the nature of their own reality, to feel empowered, to actually get curious, to get intentional, to connect with themselves. It's so funny because people's beliefs are so fragile that they feel the need to lash out, right? Now that I've deconstructed my beliefs, I feel no need to lash out at anyone, right? Like, if you're stating your beliefs, as long as you're not talking about violating anyone's human rights, right? And you're not passing racist or homophobic or xenophobic rhetoric, I'm not going to be saying anything to you. Live and let live. But the minute you cross that line, I'm going to say something. But what's interesting is me simply saying I've gone through this deconstructive journey and I've walked away from evangelical Christianity, is enough to trigger people to reach out and say, oh my God, you're going to go to hell. And I'm like, wow, I thought the Bible says, judge not lest you be judged. Right?
It does. I know it does. I read that.
I have a good portion of the Bible memorized. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, if God is the loving God that you state that he is, then my relationship with him is between he and I, or lack of relationship is between he and I. It's not for you. God, the number one commandment in the Bible is to love, and lashing out at someone simply because they don't share your beliefs anymore is not a demonstration of love. It's a demonstration of the fragility of your belief system.
And fear. And
Yeah,
Dana, you're not,
exactly. Yeah.
you're nodding your head wildly, Dana.
It's just so well said. So well said. And I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of liberating yourself to have your own beliefs, is then you automatically feel this space of allowing others their liberty.
Exactly.
to feel and to express and to choose into whatever beliefs they want.
Yeah.
And I think that's been one of the most beautiful things that I've really tried to keep in balance, because I do know people who've left and kind of went opposite, and it's like it's not okay to be in that religion or to believe that thing. And so you can go the opposite. But I did really work hard when I left, because I have so many close family members who were still in, that I wanted to keep those relationships. I wanted them to feel comfortable around me, because I want to feel comfortable around them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that re-navigation is uncomfortable, of saying, you know, restating and changing boundaries and changing what you can talk about and what's okay and what's not. That's uncomfortable. And sometimes even got a little explosive in my family. And, you know, I am so lucky enough to have parents that came back and circled back to, okay, no matter what, bottom line, love. We will get there, even if it's messy. And if it's bumpy and hard. And I've really appreciated that in my parents, especially my mother. She really cultivated that and showed up.
Two things I had to learn really quickly, like that I had to deconstruct really quickly, that ultimately like just blew my mind, is number one, I didn't owe anyone a statement of my beliefs anymore. Right? Because Christianity
for me.
You do. Christianity teaches you have to constantly be telling everybody who you are and what you believe, and that you owe it to that, and you must constantly justify your beliefs. Second was that I don't need to proselytize at all. Proselytizing is not something I'm buying into anymore, right? I don't owe it to anyone to try to convince them that they need to share my exact beliefs. First of all, 8 billion people on this planet, and every single one of them is different than the other. Every single one of them has a different lived experience and an interaction with the world. And so every single one, even if we're both evangelical Christian, or we're both atheists, or we're both agnostic or Buddhist, our beliefs are going to be different. There is no way for us to have exactly the same beliefs. There's just no way. And so, you know, when I was able to finally sit with that and like deconstruct the PTSD, the religious PTSD around the requirement to proselytize, it was mind-blowing. It changed my life. I was like, oh my God, I do have PTSD. I have so much anxiety around needing to share what I believe now and having to tell everybody, right? And when I was able to release that, I was like, oh, this is good. This is how other people live. Oh my God, this is amazing.
So much energy freed up.
Now I want to make it clear that this is not a religious bashing session.
No, definitely not. I have friends from all kinds of religious backgrounds.
Me too.
Yeah.
But there are some people who are feeling like whatever their organization that they're in, that it's not enough, that they want more. They want to understand more. They want to understand where they really are, and their heart is telling them something different.
Yeah.
And so it's important that they be able to open themselves up to understand that there's more. And it doesn't have to be what somebody else says is the truth. What is your truth for you? I know, Shana, that's a part of the work that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, is being able to tap back into our curiosity. Curiosity did not kill the cat. Curiosity made the cat and the dog best friends, right? Curiosity, anybody who tells you you don't have a right to question, you have to question that, because no one has authority we don't give them. And anybody who's demanding authority and, you know, respect above our own intuition and above our own sense and our own authenticity, anybody who's usurping that, anybody who's trying to take that power away from you and telling you you don't have a right to question them, run. Because anybody who's not interested in accountability, that's oppression, that's abuse, right? Because all authority, if you're truly a leader, you're looking for accountability, you're expecting it, you desire it, because you know it makes you a better leader, because people choose to follow you. If you're requiring people to follow you and using manipulation and fear, that's no longer an authentic situation. That's no longer a safe situation. That's a no for me, right? And so that's why for me, I walked away from religion. But I have friends of all kinds of religious backgrounds, and we respect each other's beliefs deeply. And we don't spend time trying to proselytize each other. We just spend time talking about our hopes and our dreams and our loves for life and what we're accomplishing and so on and so forth. And we deeply respect one another's beliefs.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
And that makes it whole, makes it complete, makes it loving, makes it happy, and it doesn't matter. I have a good friend who is a officer in Dana's old church, and I mean, he's a really good friend of mine. He knows I don't subscribe to what he
Yeah.
thinks is appropriate,
Yeah.
and but that's okay because he allows me to be me, and
Yeah.
it's not that I'm just not that way anymore. I got too many things, and that's why talking to people like you, Shana, you are happy, you are helping, you are
Yeah.
trying to help people live their lives in a better, more complete way, and that I just think what you're doing is just wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I love what I do. I love that people can tell me their truth, right? That I'm the keeper of their secrets. There's a deep trust that's required. Like I said, there's a deep psychological connection between our home and our mental health. There's been studies that have proven that. There's a study that came out in Europe in 2019 of our happiness. The three most important things. Number one is our mental health. Number two is our home. Number three is our physical health, right? And so number two is our home. And I really believe that number one and number two are indelibly tied together. So when people hire me and they invite me into their home to talk about their life, to talk about their home, to talk about the connection between the two, or whether it be simply about, their, development as an entrepreneur or a leader or whatever context, right? You're inviting me into your life, and that I'm honored to be entrusted with their truth, with their story, and to be someone they're seeking to, help them to reframe, right? Because I become the mirror, right? And I'm so thankful that I'm the mirror that they're choosing. I deeply honor that.
That's really cool, Dana.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just soaking up your words because it's so beautifully said. And it's definitely my same sentiments of my heart. I think that's being in that space of someone's home, but also this home.
Yeah.
As you're life coaching and as you're working with somebody, to me, when somebody trusts you enough to just open up, it is deeply one of the most, like, hands down, one of the most sacred spaces you could ever enter into with another person.
Yeah.
Is those things that they're deeply afraid of or worried about, or that they think are unlovable, or they have that shame wrapped around it. Those places, it's like, to bring light and love to those places is one of the most soul fulfilling experiences.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it on the planet for me. Nothing.
Yeah. Absolutely not. I tell people my work is the connection between interior design, and I'm pointing at my physical environment, and interior design, and I'm pointing at myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the connection between those two things, for sure.
And I think it's important that we are always learning, and we're always growing, and we're always gaining new experiences.
Yeah.
And I'm about to do that right now, as a matter of fact, because Dana, we have to go to commercial, and I would like to have you take us out into the commercial break, if you would be so kind.
Great. Well,
I think I just scared her a little bit.
my palms are sweating.
we did not discuss this, and but she's with me on Fridays whenever she can. She's a marvelous soul. But she, at one point or another, Shana, during this conversation, I guarantee you she will cry.
Okay, great. I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it. Yeah.
The waterworks are natural for me.
It's just part of processing our emotions.
Yeah.
Exactly. So take us to break. Do it kind of like this. And you're listening to Positive Talk Radio, and we'll be right back after these messages. Say something like that.
Okay. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio, and we will be back right after these messages.
Hey there. I'm excited that you're listening right now, and if you like what we're doing here, you're going to love positivetalkradio.net. On positivetalkradio.net, each show, which is recorded live, is packed with positive information, with real people discussing real issues and positive solutions that can work for everyone. I hope that you'll join us on positivetalkradio.net and listen to all 340 plus shows. I think it's worth your time. But then, that's just me. That's positivetalkradio.net, your home for great progressive, positive podcasts.
When you want to say more than words communicate, You can with flowers. Your custom boutique floral studio in Bothell, Washington is anaturaldesign.com, connecting you to nature through the language of flowers. Where your people are is where our flowers are beautiful. Your success is our goal. anaturaldesign.com at your fingertips today.
Hey, my friend, I'd really like to thank you for listening to the show today. As you may know, I started Positive Talk Radio way back in 2003. We were one of the first shows on KKNW. For 11 months, I was fortunate to be part of many lives, making a positive difference with great interviews and discussions, creating new thoughts and ideas. Sadly, for financial reasons, I had to terminate the show. Well, it took 18 years, but we're back better than ever. And not only on KKNW Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but also podcasting with several inspiring channels with the same driving passion as the original. Please visit kmmedia.pro for complete information about all of these shows. In addition, if you feel called to keep positive programming on the air, you can join us by sponsoring the show and aligning yourself with our mission, which is nothing short of saving the planet and each other. Again, that's kmmedia.pro. I'll see you there. And welcome back to Positive Talk Radio, everybody. It's Friday. It's Friday. I hope everybody's having a good Friday. And Dana, you did just fabulously well. You are now a professional broadcaster. What do you think?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you did so good. I would have done the same thing you did, have been like, what do I say? I don't know.
Oh yeah, and I'm like my mind's scanning all my memories of like, what does Kevin say? What does he say? What does he usually do in this moment?
So Shana, I want to talk about. I'll give it a shot and see if Concinnate.
Nailed it. You nailed it. Yay. Okay.
Concinnate.world. That is your website. But what in the world does Concinnate mean?
Luckily, I keep this handy dandy index card so that I can remember the exact words and I don't have to memorize it. Consonate means to arrange or blend together skillfully as parts or elements put together in a harmonious, precisely appropriate or elegant manner. It's a verb. It's a real word. It just happens to be a dead word, one that we don't use anymore. It came into being in like the 1500s, and then I don't know exactly when it died off, but we don't use it anymore. But it sounds familiar enough, and then the word itself, and then the definition was so perfect for what I do and my intention in my work that I was like, that's me. I need that. That's mine. I'm taking it.
How did you find it?
I am a nerd. So I've read dictionaries since I was
You don't look like a nerd.
Nerds come in all shapes and sizes. So I have been a nerd for all of my life. I used to read dictionaries growing up, and that's when people still read actual books. And like actually had printed dictionaries. Now you have like a website, right? Or like an app. I have both. And so I would read the dictionary and find all the words that I didn't know. And I also kept a notepad on me at all times, and I would write down all the unfamiliar words. So like one of my friends and I have this deep love of words and love of language. And so every once in a while we come across an interesting word and we'll just like snap a shot of it and send it to each other in text messages. This is completely normal. So she came across the word Concinnate, which happens to be like a cousin word of consonate. And she sent it to me, and immediately my like antenna go off. And I was like, oh my God, this word. And so I started diving into the history of the word and so on and so forth. And I was like, this is incredible. And then I found consonate. It's not easy when you like dive in, when you're going looking for, you really have to look for them if they're dead words. Like it's a little bit harder to find its related words than I'm leading on. And so, but if you put it into dictionary.com, it'll come up. Consonate will. And so that was it. I read the word and I was like, this is it. I'm going to use it as a noun, even though it's a verb. And that was it. It was immediate. And then I just picked a font and I was like, that's it. That's the company name. This is the logo. We're done.
That was easy. And you also were able to, huh?
It took a year and a half. Yeah.
But you were able to find the domain name that you wanted and everything. So I always looked at when I had the opportunity to come up with a show name, I looked to see if it was the domain was available. If it wasn't available, then I knew that that wasn't the domain for me. But as it turns out, positivetalkradio.net was available. .com is still owned by a guy that was on the radio station in 2003. He bought it and he keeps it, and now he wants $2,500 for me to give it to for. So it's like, no, positivetalkradio.net will work just fine.
Just fine. Yeah, that was for me. Concinnate.com was taken. And then actually, I kind of was glad that it was, because .world felt more applicable. It felt more aligned with what I'm doing. And I remember the marketing person who I was working with at the time, was an outside consultant. He was like, no one's ever going to go to a website with like .world. They're not even going to know what that is. And I was like, this is 2021 at the time, right? I'm like, the people understand that like .coms are all taken. No one's able to like use them anymore unless you're paying like $40,000 for them. So I was like, no, I think I'm going to be okay. And lo and behold, you know, my website metrics are just fine.
And you're doing very well. You've got collaborators, you've got workshops, you do coaching, you do a lot of different things. It's the same as Dana. And I'm, by the way, I've got two coaches here, and I want to make sure that everybody is aware of the fact that everybody needs a coach. I'm willing to bet that you both have got coaches.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Mentors and coaches, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
100%. I agree. I think that living your tools and constantly growing and expanding is just part of my reality and what I do now.
Yeah.
So I actually just joined a mastermind this week with a coach.
Yeah.
So
I regularly hire, usually not all year, because it takes a lot. But usually 3 to 6 months out of every year, I'm working with a coach. And then the rest of the time I'm reading books. So the authors become kind of the mentors in my head, you know, new levels of accountability. So like, if you can't afford to hire a coach, I understand that, right? But group coaching can be a much more affordable way to do that. And then also, like, if you can't afford that, that's okay. You can also then tap into books, right? Buy the different mentors, buy the different coaches and different psychologists and so on and so forth. But something I tell people is to make sure that your entire, you know, reading life is not personal development or professional development. You have to mix in, there's been study after study that shows if you mix in fiction, right, with that, it actually helps you to process the information that you're learning in those nonfiction books through the fictional characters. So just make sure that you're having that interaction, you know, that it's not all learning all the time, right? We need to give our brain a break.
And both of you do group coaching, which I'm a big proponent of. Because I think that, you know, especially when you step out of your comfort zone of when you were a little kid and what you were told to do and things, and then you're out there and you're all by yourself. It's hard sometimes to find like-minded people to join you in a community. I highly, if you are out there, if you're listening to this today and you feel alone, and you don't feel like you know anybody who believes anything like you do, or is having these feelings in your heart, go search for a like-minded community.
I actively keep my group coaching extremely accessible price-wise, because I believe in the democratization of information and in building community, right? And so I have people typically my group coaching looks like everyone from like 25 to 55, right? I'm working with a full range of people, all different ethnic, gender, background, everything, right? I love the diversity of that. And I also think it's important that it not be priced at a place that you're only dealing with people at a specific economic level, right? I think it needs to be offered to everyone. So my group coaching is only $200 a month, right? Like it's, you know, it's $200 a month, right? And I know that for some people that's still a lot, which is why I then recommend, okay, read some books, so on and so forth. But I purposely keep it that way, because to me, there's so much benefit in us having those communal conversations, right? It's like these circles, you know, when you look back at indigenous practice around story circles and sharing circles and this way of interacting with one another, of keeping one another accountable, and also understanding other people's perspective on the same information, right? Because I'm saying, okay, this is what the conversation is, and then 20 people are hearing that differently based on their own view and perspective of the world. And then they each get to hear how each other heard it and processed it, and then learn from each other's hearing and processing. It's such a beautiful thing. And so for me, again, I insist on keeping that, you know, one-on-one coaching, not as accessible, but group coaching accessible for sure.
Well, it's interesting because last year Dana did a group session with what were there, 12, 8 or 12?
Yeah, there was 8.
8 ladies, and some of them have become lifelong friends
Yeah.
because through the
Exactly.
course of that coaching, they now respect each other. They have learned and from each other, and it's become a really good thing. So if you're out there and you're feeling alone, don't be that way. Go talk to Shana and join
Dana.
her group, or Dana. And well,
Yeah.
Dana, do you have a group going right now?
Not right at this moment. Coming soon.
Yeah.
When
My next session kicks off May 2nd. I have 2 sessions kicking off May 2nd. So yeah, I think, if people are looking for that, again, and reach out, and talk to me, and, that kind of community, we all need it. We desperately need it more than ever.
Yeah. That
Especially
social
coming
learning is so powerful. To hear not only the common humanity in our stories, because when you hear another person's story, this is when I did my group coaching, it was like the women were like, oh, me too, exactly. And feeling that understanding, it's almost like this burden is lifted to have other people be like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And to have that experience can be so profound in your healing journey, because then you don't feel like such an outcast or weird or different. You're like, oh, this is part of the human experience, which puts you in a place of acceptance, which then makes room for change.
Yeah. It's a place where when you create, like, as the coach, as the leader of that moment, right? It's my job to moderate that conversation and to keep it on track and establish psychological safety, right? Like to make sure that everybody's being given equal time to share. Everybody's, there's no grandstanding, and then just to make sure that, like, everybody feels safe to say their truth out loud, right? The part that they wish, the quiet part that's been going on in their head all this time, the thing they wish they could say out loud to someone. That's what happens in group coaching or in one-on-one or both. I kind of recommend both, but that's what happens, is being able to, like, relax and breathe and take a breath out and then realize, okay, I can say the quiet part out loud, right? Not the, like, negative, nasty quiet part. I mean, the, like, helpful, our authentic truth quiet part.
Yeah.
I got a question for both of you, and
Sure.
that is because I see this happening all the time, and that is that for some reason, when something bad happens to us, or we have an experience that we don't like, or there's something that we want to fix, we tend to think that we're the only one in the world that's ever happened to. And that's just not so. But we stand there and go, I can't talk to anybody. Nobody else has had this happen to me, and what's happened to me and stuff. So Shana, when you're talking to people and they come across with that idea of, it's not that I'm special, it's just that nobody else has dealt with this, and you're going, there are 8 billion people. There's nothing that you could have gone through that hasn't been gone through before.
Yeah, it's hyper individualization, right? It's a tool used within capitalism, right? In establishing hierarchy, you have to pit people against each other, right? Like you have to create a class system. You have to make someone exploitable. You have to make someone the bad guy to be able to justify the massive amounts of wealth that the people at the top acquire, so on and so forth. And so our hyper individualization is a function of capitalism continuing the way that it continues in its extremely exploitative form. And so not to get too far into politics, because I also don't want to attack anybody's politics. That's not what I'm here to do. It's just what I've observed is that hyper individualization is a function of our current economic system.
Well, you are smart and a nerd. So
100%. Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, it can be a coping mechanism that's been learned. Yeah. That's been really learned, a learned behavior over time that you can develop a skill set for to change and grow and adjust.
Yeah.
How do you get people to knock it off?
I think that's the beauty of group coaching, is that we learn the tools, right, to be able to break through those negative thought processes that have been programmed into us or may have entered our thought process because of negative experiences. We can practice, right, within that group coaching setting. We can practice learning those new tools and working through those things together, and then be able to, then they start to bleed out into the rest of our life, and we find courage and curiosity, that we find a way to start approaching our life and our experiences with courage and creativity and curiosity, rather than thinking that we have to keep operating the way that we have been, right? a huge part of change is courage.
Mm-hmm.
And we find that courage together.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Now, when you are talking about change, and this is for both of you again, because I've run into this a lot during the show and talking to people, is that change initiates change, meaning that you're not the same person that you were at the end of the coaching period or the end of your exploratory period of what you're trying to accomplish for yourself. You're not the same person anymore. How do you negotiate with the people in your lives that now are looking at you saying, you're different than you used to be, and I'm not sure I feel comfortable with that. How do you negotiate that, Shana?
I think first you have to be prepared for it, right? You have to know that it's coming, because I think when you're not prepared for it, it kind of smacks you across the face. And then there's this there's like this there's this thing that comes up that we start making ourselves bad and wrong for changing sometimes. Not for everyone, but it has come up for me in the past, like, oh, am I? But I think it's bumping up against relationship dynamics, right? You've always showed up at this particular person for this person. And now you might, especially when we're changing and growing and learning more, we're setting new boundaries, or maybe we're setting boundaries for the first time and we're learning how to enforce those. And especially for people in our life who are not used to interacting with us and us being in a healthy way, like actually setting boundaries, they're going to push back against that, right? And I think it's just a matter of like sitting down. Usually those people genuinely love you and they're not actually trying to hurt you, and they may not realize that they're actually hurting you by saying like you've changed, I don't know how to be around you. And maybe just saying like, just reassuring them a lot of times that like you still love them and you still want to be a part of their life. There's just a new dynamic here, just having those difficult conversations, right? Just leaning into those conversations can be the thing that can help you to like stay connected, right? Because we're not used to having the uncomfortable conversations. We're used to being passive aggressive with one another. So as we move into healthy ways of being willing to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and have those conversations is a natural part of boundary setting and is a natural part of like change and healthy relationship dynamics.
Dana, anything to add?
Yeah. Take me back to the original question.
You are just soaking this in, aren't you?
I really am just soaking in everything she's saying, and I'm loving it.
When you change and you're exhibiting positive change and you're setting boundaries and you're living your life the way that you want to live it, there are reactions that you get from the people who know that say, that's not who you were. By the way, I don't like you setting boundaries because I like not being able to do that before. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think that a really important dynamic is self-love. I think self-love, self-compassion is actually vital through those times. And also taking a balanced perspective, understanding that their reaction is not you, it's their own fear of losing their relationship with you. So it's not personal. And for me, taking an observational stance of taking feedback and looking at, okay, what are the actual results? What are the results of me believing in my own sovereignty and my own ability to make my own decisions? What are what's the positive ripple effect of that? And are there any negative possibilities? And talking to people who maybe have done that before, and really taking that stance of observing and looking, instead of getting so tied up in the story of I need this person to have this relationship, and knowing too that when we grow, people will grow with us or grow out of our place, our space. And actually that's normal and healthy, because every single time, and it's hard. I'm not gonna lie. It's really not easy, especially for someone like me who's such a huge lover. I love people. I love them. I easily love and I easily connect. And so when people grow out of my life, it can be a very hard process for me. And there is grief and loss for some relationships. But every time without fail, it has created a void and a space for new people to come in that are more aligned with who I am, who are more aligned with me, more authentic, me more true to me, who then mirror that back because they're living that way too. And they help me up level. This is how I actually really, I call them my soul family. I found my soul family. Those people that I feel at home. I feel like I can just be all of me and change at any time. And they're like, great, awesome. And right now that's how they show up, and that's the dynamic. So knowing that there's grief in the process and it's okay, and that it makes room for what you really want. So what do you want? What kind of relationships do you want? And getting clear on that.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think as you set boundaries in relationships, they absolutely change, right? Like that's naturally, like relationships you didn't have boundaries in before, and you put boundaries in, 100%, those relationships change, and they're meant to, right? Because you're changing, the people you surround yourself with has to change to support that change, right? That growth in yourself, 100%.
It actually is a scientific principle.
Yeah.
When your vibration and your energy changes, then you surround yourself with like energy, and what doesn't vibrate at the same level anymore tends to fall away.
Yeah.
And it's not bad. It's not bad. And I think a lot of times we're programmed to believe that we're, especially with this can be really hard with family.
Oh, it's
I was waiting for you to say that. It's so hard with family. I've had to go low contact or no contact periods of time or entirely with members of my family. And so I learned this really early on because this is a trigger warning for anybody who's listening. I was sexually assaulted by my father when I was 15. And so having to go no contact with my father at such a young age, but I still lived in the same house. So like figuring out how to establish those boundaries. I stayed because I had 3 younger siblings, and my one sister looked just like me and she was 10 years younger. And I was like, I'm not going to leave her to the wolves. And so, I stayed until he left, until I was 24, and living in that environment, having to learn to set boundaries, so on and so forth, when I didn't have support in doing so because nobody else knew. Right. And it gave me this practice of like, how do you grow out of a relationship? How do you let yourself release from a relationship, even a parent, right?
Yeah.
And it's so hard. It's so hard. But it's not that I'm, and there's other people in my life. Obviously, I have no desire to reestablish a relationship with my father, but it had other people in my life. It's not that I'm saying you have to stay out of my life forever when we start growing apart. It's that I'm just moving in a different direction than you. And if we happen to meet up again in life, great. But the change that I'm choosing is moving at such a rapid pace for me that if you're not keeping up, it's not because I'm trying to leave you behind. It's just a choice you're making, and it's a choice I'm making. And it's not bringing us together anymore. And that's okay. Right. And I think that's the part that we have to remember when we're growing, is that it's okay to outgrow people. It's a necessary part of change. And we do, again, group coaching, I think, is really valuable in this because you gain a community to support you in this growth as you're figuring out these new dynamics with other people.
Yeah.
I get so angry with people who claim to be one thing and profess to be one thing, and then they prove through their actions that they're not at all who they said that they were, and they end up hurting people in a great way, and then they hide it. I can't. That makes me mad. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
I know,
it's because you have such a big heart, Kevin, and you just love people. You're good at that.
Well, unless I can get Nathan to give us another hour, we're going to run out of time here. So, Nathan, what do you think? Can I negotiate?
Just promise me you don't call me that other name.
Okay, Nathaniel. I mean Nathan. Yeah.
Sorry, no hour.
Got the buzzer.
Boundary. That was a boundary crossing.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. Shana, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I want to give you the opportunity, give you the floor to be able to say anything you want to about for the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, the thing that I think is just so critical for people is to get comfortable with getting curious, enter moments with, curiosity, with this reconnection to play, with an honoring of our creativity, just forming community, it takes being vulnerable enough to say, okay, I want to open up to these people. I want to trust someone in a new way. I want to, and other people become mirrors to who we are. And we see aspects of ourselves that we didn't previously see. And there's so much that's wrapped up in just getting curious about what's possible, about who we could show up as, about where we might be, able to expand in our lives and what we might be able to experience individually and together. And so I just encourage people to tap into their curiosity, right? Let themselves not know. Let themselves not be the expert. Let themselves be the perpetual student, because there's so much to learn and there's so many beautiful ways that brings us together rather than bringing us apart.
Will you come back? Can I bother you to come back on the show?
Of course, I would love it. I loved this.
Yes.
Okay. I'm so glad. I want to thank Dana Parker for being here. Inner World Movement, and what's the new website?
Evolvingtoexceptional.com.
Evolvingtoexceptional.com. It's real little writing. I can't see it.
I know.
And Shana, if you go to Concinnate.world, you can find out all about her. And I want to thank you both for being here. It's been a fabulous discussion, and I look forward to doing it again. And by the way, everybody, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got.
Yeah.
We'll see you Monday.